Hello and welcome to our Fool's Journey through the Major Arcana of the Tarot, where we take each card in turn and look at it in a very deep way at its number, its meaning and its symbolism. We have arrived at the 9th card of the Major Arcana, which is the Hermit. So go pull your deck out, get ready as we explore this card together. Welcome back, guys. So we are doing the 9th tarot card today, or the Hermit. So I was very tempted to do my hood up the whole way through, but I won't subject you to that, so I won't. For those of you that are new to the channel, I use two different tarot decks to illustrate my video with. For those of you that do normally watch it, either skip forward 2 minutes or repeat after me. So for those of you that are new, I use a Tarot de Marseille tarot deck, which is a traditional historical French style of tarot, which was popular between about the 17th and 18th century, peaking around the middle of the 18th century. This is a modern restoration that is based on the 1760s Nicholas Conver deck by Kris, Hadar. It is called the Veritable Tarot de Marseille, and you can find a link of it below in the description box. This is the 1909 Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which most of you might be aware of. It has become kind of the standard tarot deck and quite a popular tarot deck. It was drawn and painted by Pamela Coleman Smith, here's her signature, and was commissioned by a man called Arthur Edward Waite. I don't know why I keep wanting to say Edward. He was a member of many secret societies and esoteric societies, including the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And quite a lot of the imagery in this tarot deck is based on the teachings of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Quite a lot of the modern tarot decks are based on these designs because it has become quite the standard. However, some modern decks have kind of harkened back to this older French style of tarot. So your tarot deck will normally be based on one of the two. If it isn't, if it falls outside of these traditions, this video is still going to be applicable. Some of the comments around the small symbols in the card might not quite equate with the deck that you've got, but the insinuations and the main points will still apply to your tarot deck, including the meanings and the interpretations. Cool? Good. The other tarot card that I am going to make a reference to is this one. This is based on the Visconti Sforza tarot decks, which was a collection of historical decks, around about 12, I think, each with different cards missing. That was hand painted. They were all hand painted and commissioned by the Visconti and the Sforza families in Italy, which were very well-to-do families. These are some of the earliest tarot cards known to exist, and some of the imagery and symbolism is slightly different to modern day tarot cards, so sometimes it's quite nice to kind of refer back to some of these symbols. So I think that they're kind of normally pitched around being kind of 1450s, and I will refer to this card. So that is the housekeeping done. Welcome back if you skipped forward. We are going to look, as always, at the title, the numerology and the symbolism and some of the meanings. The title of this is the Hermit. I made a mention in my last video about the first septenary of cards, the first set of 7 of the Major Arcana, being more everyday people in society in medieval times. So they have the Pope, they have street performers, they have emperors and empresses. It's kind of people that you would know in everyday life. I said that the second set is mostly to do with virtues or concepts or things that rule over society or you internalize in some way. This is the exception. as I said in the general introduction to the Major Arcana, if I remember, I will put the link here. If not, I'm sorry. As I said in that, there's always an exception to every rule. And this is kind of the exception to that rule. This is the Hermit, a person, a thing, a being that was very popular back in kind of the medieval times and Renaissance times. So these were religious people that decided to seclude themselves and retreat, often in hard to access places like caves or on the top of mountains or in woodland, to live a spiritual life and kind of have a direct access to spirituality and the divine, and kind of search for a religious experience, a direct experience of the divine, God, Jesus, what, insert your kind of religion in brackets. If you think about it, it should have been relatively heretical, because the church and the Pope on one hand are saying that access to Jesus, the way to Jesus and God, is through the church and through the Pope. Whereas you've got these hermits that are doing kind of the opposite. They're running away. They're normally living ascetic lifestyle, stripping back to the bare necessities and living kind of a state of poverty, and trying to kind of get a direct access that is outside the church. However, they seem to have coexisted to the point where some hermits have been made saints and kind of recognised for their spiritual values and lifestyles. So that is kind of what a hermit is. They kind of retreat. They normally live a ascetic lifestyle where they strip back to kind of imposed self-poverty and living on the essentials of life, and they would try to live their lives in kind of in pursuit of the spiritual, in pursuit of a religious experience. The other thing that I do note about the title is that some buildings, especially here in the UK, you get being called the Hermitage, and a hermitage is a place where a hermit would be. So some of those buildings, especially if they're old, are normally either in the location of where a hermit used to live and was a famous hermit used to live, or they were built on top of the location that hermit used to live. Sometimes modern buildings are called a hermitage, and that is normally because it's associated with a retreat or a place to retreat to. So for example, it might be running as a writer's retreat for writers to go and spend their day-to-day life writing, which is kind of like the modern version, I suppose, of a hermit, and not so spiritual. Or it might be kind of a health retreat, a kind of a philosophy retreat or a meditation retreat that's called the Hermitage. So we still use the Hermitage as a kind of a thing, and it's kind of like the place where a hermit would retreat. There is a older tradition of different names for this card. Obviously by this kind of period we've kind of got standardized, so the Tarot de Marseille is Le Hermit and this is the Hermit in the Rider-Waite-Smith, and most modern decks will be called the Hermit unless they've decided to step outside of this tradition. The earlier card names have been things like the Old Man, the Hunchback, which I think is particularly rude, and Time or Father Time, and that is one that I will refer back to when we do the numerology. But as far as we go here, it's pretty much the standard to be called the Hermit, and it is referring to the person of a hermit or living a hermity lifestyle. Not so many hermits running around nowadays. Anyway, so that is the kind of the title summarized. Let's talk about the number 9. So the number 9, if you remember, I mentioned in 8 was the largest even number of numerology because we only go up to 9, and 9 is therefore the highest odd number in numerology. Everything after that is a repeat of those earlier numbers, just on a different higher level plane. So for example, number 12, the Hanged Man, would be a repeat of 3, because 1, 2, 12, 1, 2 is 1 plus 2 equals 3. So everything afterwards is just a reiteration of those first 9. So it's only really important that you know those 9 really in tarot. So we are now doing the highest number in traditional kind of numerology. Yes, some of the higher ones have special meanings that don't reflect the earlier numbers, but the majority of it is just reduced down to that early 9 by ways of, I think they call it theosophic addition. So those are the 1 to 9. So we're now doing the upper limit. This is, as I always kind of point out, an odd number, so there's something active about it. It's got that free radical, so it's not so stable as the 8 is, and the even numbers. It's got something that's trying to move forward or move to do something. And this is, as I said, it's kind of a snapshot between 8 and what comes after. It's a transitionary phase. And that's kind of interesting because we are at the upper limit, so everything else goes back to 1. So we've got a little bit about the 9. That's about kind of death and rebirth and transition. So 9s are also about that kind of transition and the moving over back to the start. If you link this to, for example, 9 months of a pregnancy, 9 is the upper limit of a pregnancy where it clicks over to becoming the start of something new, a birth, a new beginning. So we can see those kind of 9s being transitionary in other things. The other thing to see it as is the upper limit of one thing, the top limit of something else. It's the accumulation of everything that's gone before to a certain level. So in the minor cards, that can be, if everything has kind of accumulated that has been good, then it's a good result. If it's something that's been kind of a bit negative or a bit problematic, then there's something about the 9 that has to be resolved. There's a trial of sorts. So in the cups, 9 is quite contented, it's quite happy. In the swords, because everything has been a bit trials and tribulations, the grand summary of that is that you have to kind of get over something to work through something. So 9 is kind of like the upper limit of the numbers that have gone before and getting ready for the next phase. The other point about that upper limit, I did a bit of research before this video and found that quite a lot of the Anglo-Saxon laws use the number 9. So for example, if a man's dog bit a stranger, the dog would be killed and put down if it was 9 steps away from the house. If someone was beat up by a group of people, it would constitute assault if it was more than 9 people. So this is kind of almost saying the upper limit of acceptability is this 9. Yeah, so we're talking about that upper limit again. Great. Now I want to refer back to the little image that I did in my last video for numerology with the planets. So let me redraw it. We did the geocentric ordering of the planets, if you remember. We did Earth here, geocentric meaning Earth-centered, like the old version of planets going around the Earth. So we have Earth here, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Yeah, so that's the geocentric ordering of the planets all the way out. We also added this, which was the fixed stars, the sphere of the fixed stars that go all the way around, or the zodiac. So this is where your Pisces, your Cancer, your Taurus, Leo, everything else is situated. And then outside of that, we put the number 1, which was God or divine or divinity. 1 doesn't count as a number in kind of Pythagorean number theory, because numbers, the word number, is similar to the word numerous, yeah, which means multi, plural. And 1 is not a multi or a plural, it is a unity. So everything comes out of this perfect unity, this perfect 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. So everything stems out of this unity. So it's the origin of all numbers. But as it in and of itself is a monad, it's a singular, it's a complete unity. So it was seen as kind of God, deity, the first principle, the first cause, all those kind of things. We put 2 at the fixed stars, and then we numbered this way: 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and obviously this would kind of be 10, but 10 doesn't exist in numerology because it kind of refers back to the 1. So there we are. Here with the 9, we are then looking at the moon. So there is something about this card that is linked to the moon. The moon is changeable, so it's about changes. Changeable because the moon has many phases. It goes through different phases through the month, through 28-day cycle, and it causes tides to rise and fall, so it makes changes. So in cartomancy, the 9s can be about change. So if we're doing cartomancy with a normal playing card deck, a 9 of hearts would be a change of heart, a change of feelings. A 9 of diamonds would be a change in finances. Something about your financial or your material possessions is changing. Your material possession situation is changing in some ways. So there is an aspect of change to be made, and that's kind of the active principle of the 9s. The other thing about 9, it is the first odd number that is divisible other than 1 itself. It's the first non-prime odd number in the series. Yeah. So 9 has factorials or multiplications of 3 times 3. 3 times 3 links to obviously Saturn here. It's Saturn of Saturn. This is interesting because there are number squares. So in Western esoteric and occult kind of lore, especially in the old grimoires, you see these number squares, these magic number squares, and each planet has one ascribed. So 3 by 3 is Saturn's number square, 4 by 4 is Jupiter, 5 by 5 would be Mars, and so on and so forth. They're seen as kind of like almost like calling cards or talismans of that planet. They're kind of magical. So with this, each square is numbered. Let me see whether I can do this right off the bat. I think here is 7, 9. And if I've done it right, then the sum of each of the rows and each of the columns will be the same. So here we go. 4 plus 9 plus 2 is 15. Yep, I think I've done it right. 3 plus 7 plus 5 is 15. 8 plus 1 plus 6 is 15. So then these are 15 too. And then the diagonals in this one will also equal 15. Yeah, so 4, 5, 6, 15, 2, 5, 8, 15. So this was seen as kind of almost magical. So these had magical properties. And you will sometimes see them with a symbol that's superimposed over the top. So in this one it would be here, and that is kind of like the glyph of the intelligence of Saturn. It's kind of like the talisman or the sigil of this number square. It's in the symbol form. So the 3 by 3 is linked to Saturn. So there's certain things about this card that is Saturnine. Saturn is often depicted a little bit like Kronos in the Greek myths. So he is sometimes seen as an old man, sometimes seen with a stick, and very often is seen with an hourglass to symbolize his rule over time. He is old father time, and he is the old ruler of the universe, the solar system, the planets. So here we go. In the Visconti Sforza. Visconti Sforza has the hourglass and is an old man with a stick struggling to walk, which is a Saturnine image. It is about this old man aspect. And if you remember from another video, I think it was probably an unboxing that I talked about it, I made a reference to the Hermit being linked to time. I said that if you have done a spread where you want to know the timings of it, when will this happen? You know, you've laid a spread, it said, good things are on the way, you're going to get a letter next month. How do you know it's going to be next month? Well, If this card hasn't come out of the tarot deck, you can look for this, and because it's about time, the card it's facing will tell you the time. So if you look through a deck, don't have one on standby. So if you look through the deck and found him facing like this, this card, then this card will tell you the timing. And there's different ways of timing, which I won't go into this video. I'll make a separate video about timing tarot spreads. So that's the reason why I said it. It's not very obvious from these cards because there's nothing referencing time, but that's the reason why you can use this card as a timing. If it is out in the spread, then you can see what it's looking at, like this card. Yeah. So that's the link to time and to Saturn. Right. What else about numbers? I think that is about it. The only other thing about numbers is that in some Christian kind of, I suppose it's more Gnostic, Christian theology, 9 is seen as a number of sadness or misery or pain. In the tarot, you can kind of see that when it's a summary of a bad suit. So the summary of wands, because it's been a struggling kind of suit. It's not negatively bad, but because it's been a struggle, can be a bit negative and painful. And the same as the 9 as swords, because it's about emotional upheaval. The reason why they can see that is, I think, something like the 9th Psalm in the Bible. People can correct me here. 9th Psalm in the Bible is seen to predict the rise of the Antichrist. So that is the reason why sometimes people see the 9 as being slightly sinister, slightly evil. But there is a link to this 9 in with spiritual matters. Once again, we see the 3x3. That's triangle of triangle, and triangle is about the spirit. It's about growth. It's about the vivifying life principle of spirit. So here we can kind of see that there is some sort of spiritual aspect, and we can see that in that life, death, rebirth, transitionary phase kind of aspect. Cool? Good. That basically sums up the numerology in a large, detailed way. If any of that has been a little bit quick for you, please put a comment in below. I am thinking about doing a numerology video just to go over those numbers in a very kind of quick way, just so that you can kind of have rather than keep diving into these videos. So that will happen on my next recording schedule. So now let us look at the symbols. This card, we are not looking too much at hidden symbols, so I won't be drawing over the card on the computer screen because there's just nothing to do. You can see that he is just a straight line in this card holding this, so there's like a little bit of an upside down L. Here you can kind of see a little bit of a backwards K, and the only thing that I can figure out that a backwards K can represent is something to do with baseball. And I'm English, so I don't really understand baseball. So as that is the case, I'm not going to be drawing over the card today. I'm just going to be pointing out symbolism in this card. So first thing that I want to point out is the little face wrinkles. This could be two things. It could either symbolize that he's surprised by what he's looking at, or it could be just showing that he's wise. That furrowed brow is one of wisdom, and I think it's more along the lines of saying the Hermit is wise. You don't see this in the Rider-Waite deck, but it is here in the Tarot de Marseille. Here the hour lamp is now a lantern, and lanterns are about lighting the way. It is about seeing the way and being cautious. It's also the light of wisdom and truth that is shining out. So in the darkness, the Hermit is shining a ray of truth and guidance. So this is about truth, it's about guiding, and I'll make a mention of that when I jump over to this card, and it is about being cautious, seeing where you're walking. Here in the Rider-Waite-Smith, you can see that he's standing on top of a precipice, like on top of the tip of a mountain, and he's holding the lamp over and he's looking down as if he is lighting the way for other people to get into the place where he is. He is guiding the path with light, and he does almost look like a street lamp here because of this very straight back and holding it up. His eyesight is gazing down at the bottom of the mountain, so either the way that he's come, which I'll talk about in a second, or the way others are following. The cards are both looking this way, which is to the past. So some of this wisdom is coming from referencing the past, and we saw this in the 2, and I'll make a mention of the 2 in a bit, but we saw this looking back for wisdom in the past in the 2, which is the High Priestess or the Papess. He is very aware that his experience is leading his wisdom. So his experience of being a hermit has taught him more. So he's looking into the past for that reason. The other thing about the lamp in the Rider-Waite-Smith, it's a 6-point star, or a Star of David. So this is the 2 elemental triangles crisscrossing. So it's the upside down triangle of water, which denotes wisdom or experience or emotions, and the upright triangle of fire. So in a way that this is linked to the 9, because it's a 3 by 3, and it's this merging of active and passive. So it's kind of a balance in this card. So the other thing about the lamp is he is partly hiding it. You can see in the Tarot de Marseille, his cape goes over, and this is partly obscuring, and it's talking about that kind of hidden part of wisdom, that hidden part of only giving out the necessary information and holding back. So there's a little bit of reticence about casting pearls among swine. We can see this in the second card too, which I am now going to talk about. So in the this second septenary, the second set of 7 cards, this is the second card in the pile. We've got the 8 here, and this is the 9. So it's the second card. The second card in the first septenary, which would be directly over it, is the Papess. Let me just do that, so that's a little bit easier. Yep, so there's the Papess. So there is a little bit of a hint between these 2. Both of them are heavily cloaked, especially in the Tarot de Marseille, and both of them are looking towards the past. Then both of them are holding something that they are partly covering. So here in the Papess, it's her hidden book of wisdom that she's slightly covering. So it can be obscuring some of the information, concealing it, only giving out what you want to society. And this is kind of the same kind of thing. It's partly obscuring this light of truth. So here it's about the word, written information, kind of connecting to intuition, and here it's about truth and light. So there is some similarities in this card, and I do recommend that you sit down with these cards and kind of try and work out some of these similarities, because they have both the second card into their sets. This is a less so. This almost makes him look like one of the pillars, but there's less kind of similarity between these 2. But it is worth kind of having a look at those 2 anyway and seeing what you can kind of see. Thank you, High Priestess. Right, so let us go back to here. The other thing is, if we remember, the 9s are linked to the moon and to lunar things, and we can see 2 little moons. We can see one in the back of his hood here, this little yellow crescent moon, and we can see one here, another little yellow crescent moon. This is a kind of reference to that lunar energy, that kind of change. The Hermit is putting his experiences into action, and it's also about one of change and transformation. So it is about guiding someone from one state to another. So we're also talking about him as a guide or a teacher or a instructor or a mentor in some ways. So there is a reference to the moons there. The other big symbol on this card is obviously this stick. This stick is obviously helping him to walk and guide his path, to keep him stable. But the other thing that it is there to do is also defend. So being a hermit was quite a dangerous thing, because you would often be out in the middle of nowhere alone and undefended. So this stick could be used to defend or protect. So if he's got some strangers that he is helping and guiding and people that have visited, he can hit people that are raiding them with a stick. So it's a symbol of protection, and as well as fighting against injustice, fighting against things that are wrong and injustice. Here it's a much larger, longer wizardy cane. This kind of makes him almost look like Merlin. This very long cane and wise kind of hooded figure that is almost Tolkien-esque. We can kind of see him being, you know, the wizard of many kind of stories. And those are mostly it on the hidden symbols. Like I said, there's not an awful lot on this card. It's pretty much what you see is what you get. If you guys can see anything else, please just point it out below, and I will be happy to include it in some way in an addition video or not. Let us talk about the meaning of this card then. So this card is obviously one about retreat. It is obviously one of taking time out, removing oneself from the environment, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing. So for example, if it came up in a work spread, it could be a warning that you're working too hard, you're removing yourself from friends and family. If it is you're having a problem and you're still trying to find a solution, it's telling you to remove yourself from the problem, take a step back and take some time to consider what the important things are and how to kind of get that. It's also referencing a guide or an instructor. If it comes up in a word of advice, it's saying look at the people around you, because someone may be able to help. So it is a guide, a spiritual teacher, a instructor or a mentor. So it is kind of hinting at someone being around you, even if they are not physically around you. So if this came up but there is no physical person that this person can pinpoint, it could be just saying that spirit, if you are more of a spiritual reader, is supporting your client to work to the best aim. They have got spiritual guidance on their behalf, and they are being aided by a spirit guide or a family relative that has passed over or something like that, to kind of get the best out of the situation and to move forward. This is a card of wisdom. It is about learning from past experiences and taking stock of what's going on before. If you remember, we have just come from the Justice card, which this card is looking back to. So Justice was about trying to internalize and decide how things have gone and what's the best way to move forward. This is now looking at that experience, looking at those lessons and putting them into action, which is wisdom. The other thing that this can kind of symbolize is a kind of crisis point, because we need an external guide or a spiritual teacher or to take stock. It is also talking about a crisis point. It's talking about that change of the nines and also that pain aspect of the nines. Something is happening now that you need to take stock of, that you need to take a step back of and look at, as well as something is happening now that you may need to ask for help to kind of navigate your way through. So a hermit can be about, this is a point of crisis, this is a point where you need to take a step back. The other thing that it can kind of symbolize is a profound change. It can symbolize that things are happening now that is going to instigate a profound or a big change in your life. So because we are at the end of the 9 and about to move on to the 10, which is right back to the start, that transition is a big transition. We're moving from the end of something to the start of something new. So that can be about a big or a profound change rather than just a small change. The other thing it can be is it can be talking about shedding light on the past or looking back at the past and trying to understand some of the past because it's compounding a problem in the present. So we can see that in the card because they are shining a light on the past. Yes, it can be kind of guiding people up, or it can be about walking cautiously forward, but it can also be shedding a light on the past to understand where you're standing. So here he is shining a light on the past path that he's walked in order to understand that he is now at the top of the mountain. But similarly, if this point is a crisis point, if there is an issue in the present, it could be being compounded by something past. And that is quite a psychological reading. So those people that love psychology are reading it in a psychological way will jump at a chance to kind of interpret it in that way. It's using... It's kind of almost Freudian, it's psychoanalytic. There is something in the past experiences that you're repeating in the present and it needs to be kind of rectified. The other thing that it can be is because, let me just pull that card back, because of this reflection on the second card, because we are in the same kind of line, I'm going to actually, I'll include these. The veil here, that the high priestess is standing aside and dictating her lessons out and being a person of reproach and repose. We pose our questions to the high priestess, she answers. Here, this is a much more experiential card, so we are stepping beyond this veil. We are going beyond what the high priestess is telling us and trying to go for direct experience. So some of it is about stepping beyond that veil and peeling back the layers to look for truth, i.e. this light. And then it can also mean about concealment. So if you remember, the hermit was in the dark, but he's also partly shrouding this, so it can be something that's hidden from view or hidden from complete awareness. So that links it back also to that kind of psychological interpretation where you might not be aware that you're repeating past behaviors in the present. So there's something that's subconsciously going on, and we need to understand and realize that subconscious or unconscious process to make it conscious and therefore have more control over it. And I think that's about it. There is some people that have kind of talked about the reversed meanings, one of which I will make mention of. So in the reversed meaning, like this, it's kind of talking about experience and wisdom. Reverse, there's a problem with that kind of experience and wisdom, so it's almost like a Peter Pan syndrome, a continuous wanting to be childlike and not learning from your experiences in a way that you should do. But that, I think, is the only other one that I kind of want to point out. Cool. So that is the Hermit Tarot card, pretty much kind of gone over as much as possible. In a career spread, it can kind of mean retreat and consider your options. It can mean don't press ahead, be a bit cautious of it, or it can be look for a mentor. Contrary, in a love spread, it can kind of mean don't go there. It can mean like the person that you're with, you need to take a step back and really consider whether this is right for you, and this is you living your truth, and this is you living the finding the best partner in and of yourself. So it can mean that cautious energy. So I've now gone over the numerology, the meaning and some of the symbolism in the card. That pretty much covers the Hermit. So I hope that's been useful and that you've taken a lot from that video. I know these are quite long. I will try and kind of do a set that is like 5 minutes on each card. But that is a good deep dive of that card. If you want anything else, if you think that I haven't covered anything sufficiently, then please post it below. I am now losing my voice. and put it in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so. The button should be there. Please like this video and share it to anyone that you think it will be useful for. For the handouts, I do a series of handouts on all of these, which are all the numerology plus extra meaning, symbols and ideas and concepts, all written in about like a 12-page little booklet. If you want those, they are for my Patreon subscribers, of whom I am giving a big shout out. Thank you. You know who you are. You are helping me continue making these videos, so thank you very much. So if you would like the handout, or the cheat sheets as I call them, consider supporting me on Patreon for the price of a digital cup of coffee every now and again, and I will give you free things and extra lessons and extra content. So thank you so much for your time. I hope that has been valuable to you, and I look forward to seeing you on my next video, which is number 10, the Wheel of Fortune. Take care.